Hello and welcome to another edition of Community Forum. My name is Joseph Feaster, and as I said earlier to the guest on the program, I've been given the duty and the privilege this morning in order to host the program, even though I have another great co-host with me on the program today, Steve Kelley. And once again, I have Norman Katz and a new addition as a panelist today, Lisa Flashenburg. And we'll have an opportunity to get better acquainted with Lisa in one moment. But wanted to tell you what the topic is today. And we believe that this is going to be a series because it's so much information to discuss. We could not do it in one show. And that's why we're covering this topic again today. And that is, we're looking at the Biden-Harris 100 days. Now, back in 2017, Steve Kelley and me, we did Trump's 100 days. And if we're still around and still have this program, we hope to do the 100 days of whoever is the president in 2024. But for the time being, we're going to focus on the president now, and that is President Biden. So again, I want to welcome my guest this morning. Good morning, Lisa. Good morning, Steve. And good morning, Norman.
Morning, Joe.
Yes, happy to have you here today. And Lisa, since you're the initiate this morning, I would ask for you just to introduce yourself to our viewing audience. And as well, Norman, I know this is your first involvement since the last program with Steve and me. I want to make sure our audience knows you because they don't want to know any more about Steve and I, but I would like for starting with you, Lisa, just introduce yourself to our viewing audience.
Good morning. So my name is Lisa Flashenburg. I live here in Stoughton. I am a property manager / real estate agent locally, and I also work with my brother in a law firm as a paralegal. I've worked in many backgrounds. I used to be a chef and own my own restaurants for many years. I've worked in Walt Disney World, so I know all about the happy places and how to keep people working together. So that's a quick synopsis of who I am.
Thank you very much, Norman.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm been a guest host on Stoughton Community Forum, for several years. I'm retired now, formerly in government, serving in the JFK and Lyndon Johnson White House for many years, and a selectman in the town of Sharon for 32 years. Have had my own show there in Sharon for a while, and I'm a public speaker on government in general, the government at the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis, the time of the JFK assassination, and how we continue forward.
Well, thank you both, Lisa, Norm, Steve. I know you have been a great fixture here in the in the town of Stoughton, and by being a real estate entrepreneur, a thoughtful and a thought leader on what should be by way of development, and certainly co-host and hosting on Community Forum. But I say most importantly for you, my good friend. So just want to say good morning to you all. Norman, you were a little bit bashful because I want to just add to your repertoire of things that you've done. The fact that you worked at CIA, on the last program, you told us that you were involved with looking at what happened on January 6th. You're in that investigation about the storming of the Capitol. And I know for some of these issues may be raw, but we couldn't begin this conversation if we didn't start with January 6th, which we did at the last program. So I'm not going to have us reiterate that. But what I want to have us discuss are some of the topics which are still out there. We had during that time and continuing to today, this whole discussion about whether there was any fraud during the election. Was the election stolen? That issue is out there. I want us to talk about that. I want to have us talk about mask or no mask and what happened with regards to not addressing the vaccine issue and where we are today. So those are the two issues I'm going to throw out. Let's start our conversation. So, I'm going to put somebody on the spot. So Norm looks like he's ready to go. So Norman, why don't you go ahead?
Okay. As far as the election fraud or not, personally watching the whole thing and watching the quote recounts that were totally unnecessary. Judges all over the country basically found no election fraud. However, this lie continues under past President Trump. And I'm upset to use that word because of yesterday's news where it said he'll be back in August. He's coming back in August. The election was stolen from him, and he'll be back in August to help the people. Quote, what people? Whose people? Why? In my opinion, being open-minded and just thinking about it, all he's doing is angering and trying to take away our democracy. The American democracy as we've known it all our lives. And that's really sad. Who does that help? I mean, he's been indicted twice. He's been investigated for fraud, lies about everything. And where are we going with this? I mean, when does it end?
Well, let me just, and I want Steve and Lisa to address as well. I guess the question or the point that I will raise, I'll pick up on what you said. The whole question was whether there was any fraud. And as you pointed out, Norman, there were several courts in several jurisdictions that found that it wasn't the case. Other secretaries of states in the states that found that they were not. And there was basically a decisive victory by Biden in the Electoral College. So we have all of these things out here. Why do you think that this view is still persisting? Steve, Lisa?
Maybe Lisa would take this first thought. Lisa, let's jump you into the program.
I think this, in a way, is to a bigger picture in that we have lost the ability to communicate from side to side. And you can see this in, in Congress itself, that nobody can cross the aisle anymore. No one can reach across. There are a few, of course, but nobody reaches across and says, hey, how can we work through something together? And I feel that it perpetuates to have the lie going because it divides the country. And then, other people who, politicians really, a lot of these days are in the position to be in power as opposed to helping people. And I think, local politicians are more into the, what can I do to benefit my community? But I feel like once they get to a certain point and a certain level, they're about how can I keep my name in the media? How can I keep things going? So when you perpetuate lies and this, and you keep division going, it benefits those people staying in power. So I feel like the bigger issue is how do we get people to actually communicate with one another? And I don't think we're making some inroads, but I don't think we've really addressed that. I feel like there's still two sides to the coin and nobody's willing to kind of do anything to make it better.
Before I come to you, Steve, I just want you to address as well. It sounds like you're saying, Lisa, that there's a disconnect for the folks who are in Washington as far as dealing with our local communities. That's been an argument that's been advanced for some time, that Washington, the inner belt of Washington is entirely different from what's going on in the country. And it seems like you're suggesting that that is the case. Their job is to be reelected, not so much to do for constituents.
Yes.
Steve?
Well, that's certainly a point well taken. I'm very much appreciative of that sense that Lisa's exhibited, that we're not getting things done for us, and as opposed to the politicians. And there is a roughly 50-50 split in the country based on the voting. So partisan creating or keeping the partisan divide is really not helpful at all. And there's so many really important issues. We've got the idea of how much inflation we're going to have, and will people be able to afford the food and the gas and the things that are right now going up at, I think, 7%. Very, very a big issue. We've also got an issue with the border and how that affects all of us. I want I'd actually like, just on the immigration issue, I have a perhaps unpopular stand. I'm gonna throw it out there and let, maybe the audience will, take more interest and think it through, and maybe they could reshape my thoughts in a follow-up meeting. But I feel if you lock your doors at home because you don't want anyone to come in, you value the things you have, you value the people in your home, I think that the same should be true for the country. It's simple. If you feel that the country should have open borders, then by all means, unlock all your doors. So, I'm living in a world, as far as I can tell, where we have to be more particular about that. And crime is constant. I manage a building in Brockton, and last week we came in and one of the cars in our lot came in with no tires. How'd that happen? Because people, stole them. They stole the tires. And so crime exists. And I think that pragmatically, we have to find strong ways as a country to come back, re-support the police by budgets and everything else, funding. And I think those are some issues that I want to see the politicians really spend their time on that. And enough of this, whether it's a Republican, a Democrat, or whoever, I want to see action on the things that affect my family, the things that affect me, the way I run my business. So that's where I see the deficiency that I think Lisa pointed out. And I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. Maybe you all feel differently, that, we should just invite as many people as we can. I mean, we have a lot of unemployment. We need people to come in and fill the jobs, certainly. But what I'm seeing is open borders and crime, which is unacceptable. And what do you all think of that?
Well, Steve.
Well, so before you go on, Norman,
Yep.
what Steve has done is take us into specific issues, and I want us to address them because I'm sitting here just percolating, wanting to respond to that. But I'm gonna hold my host position for a minute in that regard. But before you answer that, Norman, I wanted you as well, because I want you to reach back to your long history of government service and all of those administrations. Speak to Lisa's point about what has transpired over the generations, as far as that ability to have conversation across the aisle, which was different during the times when you had the Tip O'Neills of the world and Ted Kennedys of the world, and even the Strom Thurmonds of the world, the ability to have some conversation. Talk about that. And then, yes, if you and Lisa want to respond first to some of the points that Steve has made, feel free.
Well, Steve has stated open borders and what have you. Every place I look at here in Massachusetts or on Cape Cod right now, just about 95% of each business has a sign, help wanted. They can't fill the voids. What happened? What happened? Every single place, every single particular business has help wanted signs. Where are the people that used to work? Is it a fact, Steve, that they don't want to work in McDonald's? Or they don't want to work? The American-born citizens don't want to work at Stop and Shop or Shaw's or any place for $17 an hour, pushing carts, bagging, groceries or what have you. What happened to all these people? They got to still be here. So, and do I lock my doors at night? Absolutely. Do I want to let every single person who wants to come to this country? Well, you just can't do that. I mean, I'm not saying that that everyone's a terrorist or some sort of a criminal, but we have it all here. We're like a cataclysm right here in Massachusetts of the world. Where are these people who used to work these jobs? Is it because of they're getting more on unemployment than they would be going to work every day? That kind of bothers me.
Well, Norman, I just wanted you before, and I want to come to you, Lisa, and then I'll throw my 2 cents in as well on some of the points Steve raised. Norman, I wanted you to also talk about, because we also want to educate and have the conversation with our viewing audience. So what I asked you to speak to because of your long experience in public service and in government service. Things were different back during the times when you served with those administrations, about the ability, going back to Lisa's point, about the inability now, and Steve alluded to that as well, to get anything done because folks are fixated in being in partisan politics. And so we're frozen in the ability to get anything done. Was that the case that you saw during your service in the past, and even up to some of the things you're doing at the present time?
Right. Let's go back 50, 60 years. Everyone worked across the aisle, every single administration. You could see people talking together. They may disagree, but there was never this hatred or animosity until the Trump presidency. People came, they were appointed to the Supreme Court. People were on one side or the other. People crossed lines. It seemed never to be an issue until the Trump presidency. I mean, I can go back to the arguments, if you remember, Anita Hill and Justice Thomas, and so on and so forth. People don't believe what they read, what they hear, or what they see anymore. They have an attitude, and it seems to be very closed-minded.
So taking that particular point, Lisa, excuse me, for one more note, you heard Steve brought up two issues, and you're free to even respond to what Norman had said, but Steve brought up two specific issues. Steve said his idea in terms of the immigration policy, and I'm going to paraphrase, I hate to speak for my friend Steve, I won't do that, but I'll try to paraphrase, is basically saying, fine, we should lock the borders, that there's a criminal element. That's what I was reading from it. And if I'm incorrect in what I heard, then I'm sure he'll correct me. And then the other issue was around the question of police. And he simplified it by saying support for the police. And do you have any response to either or position on either one of those? And then after you speak, I'm going to give my own view on both of those issues.
So I have a lot of responses. Sort of going back to what Norman was saying, I believe the divisiveness actually started pre-Trump. I think,
Yes.
So historically, I'm not probably going to get this wrong, but I feel like something in the back of my head about maybe when Newt Gingrich was first running, that was like when it was first starting in the Senate or Congress to really get divisive. And from there, it's built. Now, I do think that when Trump came in, a lot of things, undercurrents boiled over. He's very good at pushing people's buttons, and because that's how he likes to get things done. And he pushed a lot of people's buttons, and things spilled over and somehow got where we are today, totally divisive. And that's what I was saying. Like, I don't know how we come back from that. Regarding immigration, so I work in a law office that does do some parts of immigration, and it's very interesting as each presidency changes, the rules change. And so we have a very convoluted system, and it gets worse. And I don't actually ever think it gets better. I think it just gets worse and worse because everyone comes in and changes the rules. And I think it really needs to be stripped down and redone. There are plenty of people who are trying to go through the system legally, and they're having a very difficult time because the rules keep changing. So I think part one is that the system has to be redesigned as to what the process is for someone to become a legal resident, because it's way too convoluted. What's going on at the border, I don't really have obviously a solution for that. It is kind of tragic the way people are just kind of coming into the country. I don't believe in shutting the borders, but I do believe there has to be a better way of addressing what's happening, and whether that's trying to address the problems from where the country's people are originating, or it's just what our policy has to be different at the border. But it's what we have now is just a big mess. And what was the other? Oh, police.
The other one was police.
Policing, I feel like money does have to be redistributed as far as to what is the most effective use. And I feel, sorry, my lights are on an automatic timer. And I feel like it has to be maybe I don't think it has to be broad sweep across the country. And I feel like every community has to reestablish what is important to them. I do feel like there is too much of a military presence in some of the equipment that's being used. Maybe those funds would be better spent working on better ways to work within the community. I heard on the news recently a couple of communities that have reallocated how funds are being used and specifically to their communities, whether they need more social work or they need better police training or they need to bring in additional people to help sort out issues. So again, I don't have any kind of solution to that, but I do feel like every police system needs to be readjusted.
Thank you for that. Let me weigh in on this. I think I agree with you wholeheartedly, Lisa, that the change in attitude within the country, at least politically, did start with Newt Gingrich. That was during the time right after which president I'm trying to think of, Clinton, President Clinton's time frame. It was President Clinton's time frame that he did. It was during the Clinton administration. Senior moment struck me there for a moment. And yes, and there has been the change in terms of less, and certainly when President Barack Obama came in, they made it very, very clear that they were not about to see his presidency for those 8 years prosper at all. And that's the same intent that's going on right now by the so-called Republican Party. But on the question of immigration, we've had a problem with immigration policy from its inception as to who gets in and how many from which places. So we've always had a policy that was, from my observations and from my study of the issue, have been discriminatory from which countries people would be able to originate from. I believe there's two issues that we are faced with, three issues now on immigration. One, legal immigration, meaning those persons who follow the rules and make the applications and come in that way. We have what's going on, exactly what Steve mentioned, at the border as to what should happen with people who are trying to get political asylum, and we've had the policies around that. And then we have the DACA issue, which we have yet to resolve, and it was almost a bipartisan agreement several years ago, and we're totally upended when the Trump administration came in. So we have those three segments. How we handle that is going to be a feisty issue, because there are going to be differences as to people who see it. But what I will take issue with my good friend Steve was on the what I heard, the characterization that, well, the folks coming in, they must be illegal and they must be criminals and things of that nature. I won't accept that as a premise, because that's not true. And that's what's being espoused by many persons who are talking about what should not happen in terms of allowing the persons to go through the process for political asylum, et cetera. Whether I agree with what the policy is something which I will support, what a determination that's made as to how we should address our immigration policy. And the issue will be, I may not agree with all of it, but the question is, let's make a determination as to what the policy should be. So what you were talking about, Lisa, is what they haven't done is to really, because it keeps changing all the time, no one knows what the policy is, in fact, for admission into the United States. As far as the police issue, I don't think that we can argue, and the facts bear it out, that there has been a situation whereby the police in many communities have been using their force, the force of the police, inappropriately. I served on recently the police reform for the Boston Police Department. We came up with a set of recommendations, which then Mayor Marty Walsh adopted, and none of it had anything to do with defunding the police and the issue of that. What we said was we wanted to have police accountability, and the phraseology that I always use is this, and this is the motto for police officers, and that is they are to protect and serve. And so the only thing that we wanted them to do is protect and serve in every community, as opposed to brutalizing folks in certain communities. So I think we have a policy. I'm very much involved in the mental health community. So having police respond to mental health issues may not be the best utilization of their resources or their skill set. So we have to re-examining, and I think that's what people are asking for. Should we have qualified immunity? Should we have this? Should we have that? It's open for the discussions, but we cannot sit here blindly and say there have not been situations where in certain police departments things have happened. Steve, I'm going to give you a chance to come back on that, and then I want to talk about the mask. And maybe Norman, it looks like you may want to respond to that as well. So feel free.
Okay. So Joe, first off, I want to, you didn't have to, in a sense, take exception to what I had to say about crime and immigration. I inadvertently linked them. But my point about immigration is that you just can't have open borders. Now, there is crime, whether it's an immigrant or it isn't. That's not, I didn't link, and I wasn't suggesting that the people coming in are all doing all the crime. What I'm saying is you can't have open borders because then you can't control your environment. And then on crime, we can't have open crime. So I'm saying, figure out how to fix both issues. And as far as policing, you sound like you've hit a wonderful sort of a re-engineering of police, which I think is great. But until that time, we do not want to undermine the police who are our protections. You've got people at home, I've got people at home. We cannot do that. I mean, it has to be a more careful methodology so that we can then revamp the police. We can happy to do it as long as we protect them as we go and protect ourselves as we go. So I'm not.
But Steve,
I want to make sure we don't suggest that I linked all immigrants as criminals or something. That's just not happening. I'm not saying it. I'm saying there is a lot of crime, and I'm saying there's a lot of open immigration, and both of those have to stop. That's the linkage. They both have to stop.
Well, I'm certainly happy for that clarification, but I also want to tell you, just to ask you, at least I'll say for myself, I have many persons in the family and friends who are in the police department and across the country. But would you agree that if a police officer violates the law, should they be held accountable? I think that's what we're asking for, is in terms of accountability. What has transpired customarily is that a police officer may violate the law and not being held accountable for it. Do you at least agree that if one does, that they should be held accountable for that?
Not only do I at least agree, no, there's nothing wrong with holding people accountable. You shouldn't be shielded from accountability from a badge or from a political office or anything. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is we need to be more pragmatic in looking at crime. And I happen to think there are great ways to handle crime that are not, let's say, with the prison sentence. There's other ways to do things. But we do have to control the crime until you can change that. And I gave that simple example. I mean, I'm managing properties, and we came in to a vehicle that had all the wheels stripped off. What do you do about that? We just can't accept it. We have to figure out, okay, you have to call the police. They got to try to apprehend the people. This is unacceptable behavior. Where do we go? So I'm not, I think because I have a lot of exposure on properties, I get to see crime a lot. And I just can't even imagine if we have no authoritarian system that's going to help us. We got to have something that people say, stop, you can't do that. So, I don't know. I don't know how to fix it, but I know that undermining the police is just not going to work. You're going to have a bigger mess than what you have now. We certainly want to fix things for anyone who's had any trouble with police or any kind of authoritarian things that have come up, certainly in the media, that have been terrible, and we want to see that fixed. But in the interim, it's not, we can't be letting people out of jail and off bail and all these things that we're seeing in parts of the country that have increased crime tremendously. And it's disheartening. It's heartbreaking for me.
Unfortunately, what we have are police departments that are trying to do more than they should. I do not believe in defunding any police department. I believe in reform and education, further education. As an individual, I believe in the fact that we have systemic racism across this country. Driving while black still exists. It's not as bad here as it is as we head further south. I think it may be generations after me. I'm the old man of this particular mountain of wonderful people. I respect everyone. There's no doubt if you're walking down the street and three black men are walking, young men are walking up. If you're by yourself, you may cross the street and walk on the other side. That stinks. What does a black man have to tell his young child or of drivable age then when they're driving? What are the rules? Look at the horrors that we have had. Government, and let me say, the CIA especially looks at all these, and we report in certain directions as to what's going on. And we have to look at this. What type of immediate changes do we have to make? Yet here we have, I'm kind of jumping, we have Biden and Harris coming in to take all this in and straighten it out in a month, 6 months, a year, 4 years. It'll be several generations before this happens. I heard someone comment the other day that says, do you know the blacks are taking over our country? I heard this last Thursday evening, and the woman, his wife, I assumed it was, says to him, and what difference does that make if they have the majority of votes? That's what happens. I didn't want to leave that restaurant. I wanted to stay. However, I was having dinner with a federal judge and his wife, and my wife and my son. They all walked out, and I was the last one out. And I was so furious. I wanted to stay and continue a conversation. We face a lot of difficulty. A police officer has to be a minister, a priest, a rabbi, a psychiatrist, a doctor, mental issues. I mean, so many things that they have to face. It's all in training. And we have several now that are too old. You really can't teach an old dog new tricks. It's a generation at least after me that will make these changes. And I can see Steve's point of view. I see Steve in, I'm not patronizing you, but you made a point in my mind many years ago that there is a nice, honest, straightforward man. And I've always kept that. And Steve, what is it, 25, 30 years ago? But that's stayed with me. What a pleasure to do business with someone like that. I had no doubt. Whatever he said went. So I accept the remarks that he's making. And no way did he intend to say that, or I read it, Steve, there's no way that you intend that they're all criminals. But I can see, a movement either way. How does a black individual feel when he's pulled over? I can't walk in their shoes, but I know that it's out there. And the kids today with the crazy hair and this and that, you can't judge them for that. It's a younger and different generation. But as a parent, I would freak out.
Well, let me just I want to get Lisa in, and then I'm going to respond, since I am the black man on the panel, I'm going to respond to your questions, Norm. But before I do, because I want to close this particular topic out and move on to the question of the mask and the vaccines. Lisa,
Sure.
Did you have any comments to close out this segment of the topics that have been raised both by Steve and by Norman?
So there's a lot of background noise going on, so I apologize for that right now. I want to say that I lived in Miami at one point, and at Miami, at that point, was 20% white, 80% everything else in the universe. And it was one of the best experiences of my life to live among a community of international people and experience every culture. And to be able to teach that to the rest of the country is a slow process, but I think it can be done. And I also feel like it's education for everybody. We particularly, in my religious organization, have been really looking at how do you re-educate yourself? And a lot of things are innate. You don't even know what you don't know. And so you have to learn from everybody in order to realize that maybe you're making a faux pas with someone or a culture and you're not even aware of it. So I think everyone has to learn in every culture on how to respect each other.
And Lisa, I think your point is definitely well taken. It's a matter of respect. And I just want to illuminate on some of the points that Norman made as far as a Black man. And I can tell you, I mean, I'm 71 years old. I've been practicing law for 45 years. I've had police departments work for me I was the interim town manager here in Stoughton, had a police department when I was the head of the BHA. And as I said, have family and friends in there. I can tell you for this point that if I'm driving and I see a police car, I'm going to look in my rearview mirror to see if they're going to make a U-turn to come and to stop me. And I'm talking about right now, today. What I say to my grandson, who is 11 years old, he's not driving yet, but in terms I constantly tell him and educate him, it's yes, sir, no, sir, if you are with the police and run into police officer. So we have to change. That gets back to protect and serve. That's not what a white individual has to tell their children, because officer friendly will take that white young person home to their house. That is not going to occur in the Black community. It's a reality. How can we fix it? We're going to have to do something. And I hope that before I leave this earth, we're able to get to the point that you have referenced, Lisa, where we can get respect. And as far as police departments, if we can get to the point of just protect and serve, if we can, that's what I said to the people on the task force and to the mayor. If we can get folks to just do protect and serve, I think we'll be going a long way. But let's shift the conversation, because all through the year 2020, we've all been locked down since about March 15th or March 9th of 2020 because of the pandemic. And there was this discussion about no mask, et cetera. We are now in a situation where I think around 60-something% of the country has been vaccinated. There are still those who say, I'm not going to wear a mask, I'm not going to get vaccinated. What say you, my great distinguished panel? Steve.
To what specifically, Joe? You've given me.
We're talking about the vaccine distribution and mask, no mask. We're still, folks are saying that, again, with this so-called conspiracy theory, there's no pandemic, there's no COVID. We're not going to wear a mask. It's a political statement. That's what we're faced with. But we're also faced with a country that's able to now move around, this being June of 2021, as a result of, at least in my belief, because we got the vaccine distribution in place starting with about late December, January, and now January of 2021. So the question is the Biden administration going in the right direction with regards to the whole vaccine distribution issue? And what do you feel about this mask, no mask attitude that's permeating within our society?
Well, certainly, first of all, thanks for the question. Again, repeat. It's very interesting. We had a discussion here in our offices about how did we replace the signs that we have on the building. And we came up with masks should be encouraged. So we said, we wrote on the signs, instead of saying you have to have masks, we say masks are encouraged. Because here in Massachusetts, as you know, you no longer need to have a mask. And especially if you have 2 vaccines, as many of us do, then you are not susceptible to getting it. And I do not believe you can give it to other people. That said, the science is not clear. And I think that one of the things that I think Lisa pointed towards, and perhaps Norman and yourself as well, is the process we're going about our interactions is less than it should be. I would like to see us shift to a process of asking questions. Can we ask questions of each other rather than make demands and rather than make assertions? So that I think that questions is the way to go. Like what do we know? What would we do? What are the circumstances or the metrics of a good agreement? What are the metrics of masks that would create the most safety? And then can we meet those metrics? So thinking about the interactions we have differently, do we know enough right now about masks? And there's a dispute with cloth masks that they may be actually causing more problems than helping. So, it's unclear to me that we're on track for the knowledge we need to make great decisions. So I would like us to ask more questions and have more time for answers. That's where my position sort of officially is. We're encouraging masks, but we're also, please get us the right information. What is the right information? What are the metrics that will help us make better decisions?
Well,
Do you feel that we wasted an entire year in 2020 when we weren't even trying to search for answers to the questions that you posited? We had the outbreak really, we now know, took place in the latter part of 2019. The position at the highest levels in, or at least the Trump administration, was to deny that there was anything that was any issue at all until about March of 2019. And then at that particular point, we did 2020, and we did nothing in terms of trying to address to get the distribution in play. You still feel that there are still unanswered questions, Steve, as at the present time with regards to the efficiency of wearing a mask or not, or getting the doses of the 1 or 2 doses of the vaccine?
I think that there are just so many questions this week in particular, Joe. I mean, we've just found out that the entire medical community is shifting the theme of where did the virus come from. They had said that it was not the case, and now they've shifted, and now everybody's moving over to the fact that this was made in the virology lab in Wuhan. So now this is New York Times has come out, a whole bunch of magazines, newspapers are all saying we got it wrong. So now with all those people admitting that things were wrong, how did that happen? Our process, we're not asking the right questions. And that's very frustrating. It should be, at least, I think, for all of us, that we didn't engage in a process that allowed for a better exploration of the facts.
Let me confirm.
No, before you go, and I just want, I'm going to leave it alone. I have to go back. I didn't want to make this a counterpoint with regards to the past administration, but that blame lies with the last administration not wanting to pursue and answer those particular questions. So the fact that we may be a year behind in what we're doing has to go back to what happened in the past administration. Norm, and then Lisa.
Yeah. Okay. From a professional point of view, CIA has been looking at this for a number of years. We have found that something happened in Wuhan, China. Didn't come from a bat. It didn't come from these crazy things. Something happened there, a leak in a laboratory. And I can't elaborate on that because of security, but something happened there that caused this. And the masks that we did wear, any type of masks, how many people actually caught the flu since we began wearing masks? No one. I don't know of a soul who was sick over the winter with flu during this past year because they were wearing a mask. And we social distanced to the best of our ability. I used to go to the market, always with a mask. Everyone wore a mask. Try to keep away. When you're in line, it's different. But the mask issue, or you can have a mask with a breathing hole in it, or some of them were adorned, or some of them were cloth, some of them were more of a nylon type material, or whatever. But they worked. Whatever in hell they worked. Let's see what happens now that it's been, released or alleviated as far as wearing masks. I will still wear one. I will still wear a mask. And it helped my family wearing masks. It's almost a sense of you're afraid to take it off. Yet the people in Asia, a lot of them have been wearing masks for years. My belief for this panel is this virus was an accident, and it started overseas in China.
Lisa?
So regardless of where or how the virus started, we've had to deal with it. We were a little bit lucky in that some of that mRNA research had been going on for years prior to this. So it wasn't like we were completely starting in the dark. So that was good. To me, I have been working in all my various capacities out the entire time, never on a lockdown. I have been masked everywhere I went, or if clients were coming in. I feel this is probably the first year I have not had the flu. So yes, there is a bonus to that. What it means for me is I feel that masks do work. I'm sure not everybody had the most appropriate one going, but that's fine. But what it really does for me is gives me the confidence and the ability that should something come up, if I'm feeling ill or I feel I'm around someone else, that if I have a mask, I'm confident to put that on now, no matter what, if it's going to protect me, whether it's from a virus, the flu, or the common cold.
We only have about 5 to 7 minutes, and I just want to introduce this topic to lead us towards our third series, because we have such an engaging conversation here. We're not ticking through all of the issues. What we are doing is exploring them, showing our similarities, showing our differences, which is good because that's what exists presently in our society, where we can have this, we can agree to disagree and not be disagreeable. And that would be hopeful if we had that in society as well. I want to move on to a point which I think is overarching at the present time as we look at the Biden-Harris administration, the filibuster. The question as to whether they're going to be able to get anything done is going to be contingent upon whether they can get an issue around the bifurcation that's taking place within the Senate. What is your view with regards to the filibuster? And like I said, we got about 5 minutes, so I'm going to allow you to speak a little bit because I want to get that view from all four of us regarding the filibuster. So I'm going to start with you, Lisa, then I'm going to go to Norm, then I'm going to go to Steve, and then I may have a few comments myself. Lisa?
So I probably don't really have a good opinion on this. I can see both sides of the coin. I do feel that there are times when it is appropriate if something's getting pushed through that just is not reasonable for the American public. I don't know about the length and the time and how it's carried out. Maybe those rules need to be changed, and maybe it's got to be more about bring the points to the front and not just endlessly talk until you run the clock out.
Steve?
Yeah, I think I know the least about this as I'm not in that political setting. I know the least about it, and I probably, I think that's my weakest, one of my weakest, there's probably many, but one of my weakest abilities to opine. I think that if the filibuster does more to separate us, then I'm not happy with it. I would like us to find ways to integrate our opinions and to have better lives for our families. I mean, that's the bottom line.
Norman?
The filibuster has worked in some instances. In my opinion, as of today, I think, and I have a long, political background, I think today it should be over with. It should be over with. It's a different form of government. I come from the old school, where I've seen it, I know it, I hear it from when it's doing something against the well-being of the whole United States, it should be eliminated. What can we do together to make it better for all? And
Well, let me do
that's
this.
how I'd like to leave.
Let me just set the stage for our future conversation so we're operating from the same page as to what filibuster is. What the filibuster allows one to do is in the Senate, because that's where it is. It doesn't exist in state houses. It doesn't exist in the House of Representatives, only within the Senate, in that gentlemanly 100 person body. It says that in order to have any matter to be taken up, it's going to require, or to, as they say, I think they call it prorogue. You have to have 60 votes to stop one from being able to filibuster. Now, in the past, what a filibuster had to be done, you had to stand up there and you couldn't leave the Senate floor, and you couldn't even go to the men's or ladies' room. You had to stand there, and that's how you filibuster. Well, that rule was changed by McConnell. The numbers which was changed. It used to be 2/3, was changed to 60, and you could filibuster from home, sitting in your living room, and just to be able to stop things. What the filibuster has been able to do, and all of the rule changes that took place, has allowed for the minority to control what can happen into the Senate and basically stop our government from operating, because matters will not get out of the Senate other than when they deal with money matters. And so what the filibuster is doing is very likely that none of the programs which the Biden administration would want to go forward will in fact be able to advance, because in order to, since they don't have the majority, they only have is 50-50. And when that vote comes, then the vice president pro tem of the Senate, which would be in this case, Vice President Harris, would be able to break any particular tie. But for matters that are not related to monies, they would have to have 60 votes. That means they would need 10 Republicans to do so. So therefore, gridlock, because back to the point, Lisa, you raised, the point that you raised, Steve, saying, how can we get both sides to have the conversation, communications? And as long as Mitch McConnell says that my objective is simply to make sure that this government cannot function, or this administration, that's what we have. So as we talk about in our future programs, we'll be able to talk about specific activities that the Biden administration is putting out. There's the infrastructure bill, there is the American Family Plan, there is the voting rights issue, the election issue. All of these things we'll get a chance to talk about in future programs, but our time is not winding down, it's evaporated now. I want to say thank you, as I always do, to Norman and to Steve. Lisa, I want to thank you for being on the program, and hopefully you will join us in the future ones, because I think we're going to at least have 2 more sessions. So, and I want to thank Roy Cohen, and I want to thank all of the folks at SMAC that make this happen. Norman, you have a minute.
Yeah, Joe, I'm the only one here that does not live in the town of Stoughton, and I think, speaking for myself, based on my background, knowledge, and opinion, that this is an outstanding forum, and it's good for the community of Stoughton. Do you ever get feedback from your viewers? How many viewers do you get? I think it is so important and informative to see us from all different points of view. I may be opinionated at times, but I'll shut up. I know.
Well, yeah. Well, I think Roy does get it, and others have heard, but that's a good point. Maybe at some point in time, we invite our viewing audience to, yes, if you have a view regarding the program, if you have a thought as to something you'd like to have us explore by way of questions, feel free to do so. But our time has run out, folks. I want to say once again, thank you to all of you. I want to thank you to our viewing audience. Thank you to Roy Cohen and the team at SMAC that make this happen. And I want to wish all of you a great day, and get ready for our 3rd session, which we'll plan soon. Have a great day.
Good job, Joe.
Bye-bye. Thanks all.